This year, featured among the back-to-school fashions are full lines of designer face masks for children and adults. Versace, Dolce, Dior, Chanel, Kenneth Cole, take your pick. Protective masks, themed masks, personalized masks, masks of every color, shape, and size. During this second year of pandemic, designer houses worldwide have joined in the frenzy to create, manufacture, publicize, and sell this newest everyday accessory. The world's most expensive mask, commissioned by a Chinese billionaire and delivered by the Israeli jeweler Vel, costs $1.5 million. And you thought it was expensive to go to space. Made of 210 carats of black and white diamonds and edged in 18-karat gold, it exceeds health standards, filtering out 99% of airborne particles. A well-known Israeli columnist wrote, "Fashion has always been a platform for self-expression. This is not to trivialize the pandemic, as it is not an excuse for a fashion show. But as we lose the ability to communicate through smiles and visual cues, we have come up with alternative ways of making a good first impression." We have all learned a lot about the messages that we give and receive through our eyes and the complications of being masked in society. Communication is challenging, and we feel drained from reading facial cues that begin and end at the eyes. We have donned masks for the health and well-being of ourselves and others, but I, for one, miss seeing the complete faces and hearing unobstructed voices from our children as they came through the synagogue doors this past Sunday. Our Torah portion this morning, too, is about the importance of seeing at a time of great apprehension and fear. Today we read about how it is so crucial to not only do things right, but more importantly, to do the right thing. Re'eh natati lefanecha hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara. See, look, notice, I set before you this day life and prosperity, death and adversity. For I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in God's ways, and to keep God's commandments, laws, and rules, that you may thrive and increase, and that the Lord your God may bless you. However, we are also told, but if your heart turns away and you give no heed, if you do not look and see, you shall certainly perish. You shall not long endure on the soil. How often over the past months have we learned to turn our hearts away and give no heed, to shut our eyes or to cover our eyes or the eyes of a loved one from suffering and fear? At 5 p.m, when the COVID-19 statistics appear in our phone notifications, when we cannot bear to look at the devastation of the fires in the West, or the grieving families of those who died asleep in their condos in Miami, or the victims of earthquake in Haiti, or the floods in Louisiana, Mississippi, New Jersey, and New York? What about the terror on the faces of women and children in Kabul, whose eyes reveal the truth of 20 years of progress lost and the hope for human rights vanish like smoke? It is tempting to close our eyes rather than to look at the frightening images of our elected officials hiding under chairs and behind desks, on the other side of blockaded doors in our Capitol, as they shielded themselves from fellow Americans on January 6th. It is hard to stare at the moving pictures of violence against African Americans and the photos of innocent victims of gun violence close to us here in the city of Worcester. It is excruciating to see the interviews of people who just months ago were employed and feeding their families, who are now hungry and homeless. What are we to make of 2 8-year-old children in a local elementary school who use the symbols of anti-Semitism and the tropes of hatred that neither child was old enough to understand? And yet, we, like our ancient ancestors, are the parents and grandparents. We are the adults. We grown-ups cannot hide. We cannot pull our masks up over our eyes to avoid seeing or being seen. We are responsible. Our eyes are tired and overused, but we must bravely keep our eyes, our hearts, and our souls open so we do not lose our way, so that we do not shut ourselves off from others who desperately need us. The margin of error in our relationships has increased in our masked world. We have felt pain, and we have caused pain. And ultimately, as our Torah reminds us this morning, isn't it true that most of what we really need to focus on, to see and to heal, is right in front of us, within our grasp? Surely this instruction which I enjoin upon you to this day is not too baffling for you, nor is it beyond reach. It's not in the heavens, neither is it beyond the sea. No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it. But how often do we miss those things that are right in our line of vision because our eyes are obscured, our sight clouded, our souls darkened? If I might suggest, our experiences over the last 18 months have hopefully caused us to see our world through a different lens. When life threatens to overpower us, we too benefit by looking up, looking out, and asking ourselves, can we change our perspective for one moment? What do we see in front of ourselves? What do we see within ourselves? In his Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Rabbi Leo Beck, Days of Sorrow and Pain, Leonard Baker describes Beck's efforts to prepare and protect millions of German Jews from the Nazis through his secret efforts to foster learning communities in the concentration camps. Students of Beck, before, during, and after the war, describe his calm voice, but most of all, they note his gentle eyes. A student of Beck writes, Leo Beck had optimism. He could restore your spirit. We would pour out our feelings, our concerns for the future to the sympathetic Leo Beck. I remember once he turned to us and said, Hitler cannot turn back history. We Jews will suffer. Some of us will die, but we will survive. And then he said, Wir Juden haben alte Augen. We Jews have old eyes. We are a people that has relied on our old eyes. In our 4,000-year history, our ancient eyes have seen devastation and celebration. Our old eyes has seen the world as it is today, and our insight helps us envision the future. a future that always looks better and sweeter than the past. As Jews, our eyes connect us to others. They tell the truth. We are never alone. Rabbi Sidney Greenberg writes, "When you look at life, do you see only your own life and your own needs, or do you see the lives and needs of others as well? Do you see life as a campaign for acquisition or as an adventure in sharing? How do you regard your fellow human being, one whose main function in life is to serve as a stepping stone to your success, or someone with hopes and needs just like yourself? When you look at life, do you look at it with faith or with fear? Der Juden haben alte Augen. We Jews have old eyes. We look at life with faith, and we discover faith gazing into the eyes of others." A story about two runners. We spent the better part of a decade stealing glances, but never making each other's acquaintance. The lake has a 3-kilometer walkway around it. The man I'm telling you about always went clockwise, and I counterclockwise, so that each morning at about 7:30 or so, we passed each other. I don't recall the very first time I set eyes upon him, but I suppose it was the very first time I passed him by. And once our eyes began to meet, they met for that split second every day around 7:30. With each passing day, such an introduction, well, it seemed more awkward and impossible. Every day for 10 years, we got used to that reasonless familiarity. It is difficult to explain why on any of those countless mornings we hadn't simply broken into smiles and told each other our names and shaken each other's hands. Then, one day, the invisible malady, the pandemic, made us all wear masks. In the early months of the pandemic, we walkers and joggers did not even visit the lakeside, preferring to exercise at home out of an abundance of caution. Then finally, after many months, I took up my run again. Just like before, the runner and I passed each other around 7:30. But this time, I had only walked a few steps when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hi," he said through the mask. "I didn't see you for many months after the lockdown." "I'm Jason," he said, moving his mask aside. He offered me his free hand. I told him my name and we shook hands, after which he slid his mask back on and unselfconsciously pulled out hand sanitizer from his pocket. He cleansed his hands of any potential harm from our handshake and then squeezed some of the stuff into my hands as well. "It's nice to meet you," he said, at last. Each of us guessed the other was smiling behind their mask. We walked together and exchanged niceties. He told me he was in management and explained his distinctive style with his direct peers and his direct reports. My management education has always consisted of performing my facial expressions, he called them. Frowns and grimaces are sharper than words. To my surprise, he once again took off his mask and began showing me examples. For employees who needed a correction, it was a mean, strict look, with the veins on his forehead bulging. For employees, he had a pleasant look for the good ones that cut midway between a plea and a praise. When he had parked his car wrong, there was one look for the traffic policeman. There were many more. "They're all masks," he said suddenly. every one of them a mask for a different occasion. He went on, his mask still dangling from his hand, but you notice there is no mask for what you and I should have done years ago. There's no look I had ready for walking up to a total stranger and becoming friends with him. Just walking up to him and saying hi. No mask for that at all. No mask to introduce yourself to a random stranger who doesn't matter to you. I suppose I was wearing masks too, I said. He went on, and then this pandemic came, and this mask hid all my other masks, and suddenly I didn't mind walking up to you, now that my face was hidden. My employees don't fear me anymore. This piece of cloth protects them from my gritted teeth and bared gums. Indeed, it was amazing how easy it had been when we finally shook hands. Perhaps the coronavirus should have come 10 years earlier. Now, as I write this, I can tell you that I really look forward to my run again tomorrow morning. Maybe if there isn't much of a crowd, we can take off our masks again. Being human is a strange and funny bird, but it is nothing that a pandemic can't cure. May the introspection we attempt on this Yom Kippur move us to look up and find the silver lining around the dark clouds. May we use our eyes to share love and reassurance, and may our vision and insight bring health and healing to our broken world. Amen.